Is that all right?
Sure, that's fine. I'm just,
It's just the two sets, one finance, one policy.
Yeah, there's a total of 5,
okay,
Oh,
so there are
Masco.
and then Masbo.
two policy, right? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the policy subcommittee meeting minutes of April 2nd and 30th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Unanimous? Need a motion to approve the Finance Budget Subcommittee meetings of February 24th, March 25th, and April 14th. Motion,
moved.
please. Second? Someone?
I wasn't there.
I wasn't there either.
Yeah,
So we
if it's
can't-
for approval, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions?
Abstention.
Okay. And then the MASBO interview summary. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Yeah.
Made and seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, anyone? Abstentions, anyone?
Staying, wasn't there.
Mr. Rigney abstained. So that's that. And we don't have students. I wonder if they're confused by the,
Yeah, that's what I just wrote
Change.
down to make sure.
yeah,
When we cancel next week, we'll
okay, thanks.
get them on the right schedule.
This is a time for public comments. We don't really have anyone, unless you'd like to speak now, no. So this is really unusual. I'm shocked. I thought we'd have a backlog, so a little shocked. Okay, so we're on to good news. Do we have good news?
We do. We have good news. We have a wonderful musical coming up at CHS. It starts on Thursday nights, Mary Poppin. So Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Get your tickets. Love to see you there. There's our good news.
Very good.
That's good news.
I'd just like to highlight another thing that I saw. There was a group at the high school that put on a dance and raised over $3,000 for, I think, Dana-Farber. And then what was great is they took, they went in and presented it. And I guess I'll put it this way, it was not your average student activity group, and they did a great job from everything they heard, and in the picture, when they went into Boston, they looked great. So I wanted to be sure that, we said something about that. While I have a moment, I'd also like to just remind people who are watching on TV that the Rotary's Center Village Duck Festival is this weekend. And the reason I feel it's appropriate here is that the Rotary is pretty closely allied with the schools, providing finances for both scholarship funds, Student of the Month, Student of the Year, RILA, dictionaries for all third graders, and maybe something else. So, as a member and as chair both, I would hope that you'd stop by and enjoy the good time that we're planning for Saturday. All right, new business. Mr. Superintendent.
Sure. This section is titled Director of Business and Finance. This is a nice segue from good news. When we had posted this position back in January, we originally posted it and we had gone through the entire process, vetting 12 candidates, going through our interviews, and we weren't thoroughly satisfied with the candidates that we had, so we reopened the posting. As we casted our net, we were able to come up with several capable candidates and one exceptional candidate. And the committee that we had is bringing forward, this is my recommendation to the school committee for appointment for Director of Business and Finance. I'm going to ask Michelle Cresta to come up and sit before you. I know you folks have had the opportunity to meet Michelle previously. Just as a reminder, Michelle comes to us with over 20 years of experience in municipal and school finances. She started her work at Powers & Sullivan, which is the auditing firm that the town uses, and held several positions on the town side, moving her way up to town accountant, finance director and town accountant. Earned her certification from the DESE to be a business manager, and has worked on the school side ever since. She's a staff accountant, and currently she is the business manager or the director of finance at Stoneham Public Schools. And we, as a committee and as myself, I'm recommending Michelle for your appointment. And, Mr. Chairman, I turn it over to you.
Well, first of all, it's good to see you again, and welcome to Chelmsford. I guess I will entertain a motion, and then we can go on from there.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Michelle Crusta as our new Director of Business and Finance for Chelmsford Public Schools.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to make the appointment. All those in favor, you can say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Welcome to Chelmsford officially. Would you like to take a moment to just tell us a little bit about, for the
the
audience,
viewers at home.
a little bit about yourself?
Dr. Tiano pretty much summed up my 20
Yeah.
years' experience.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. But I really look forward to working with Chelmsford, with the town officials, the school committee, the administrative team, and I think we can really make a difference, and I'm very excited to join you guys and be part of the solution.
It's fantastic. We were very happy to, we have a number of appointments, and it's great to be moving forward, and particularly with such a good appointment, so welcome.
Thank you.
I just want to say I had the pleasure of sitting on the panel that included the treasurer, town treasurer, and the town accountant. And the comfort level that you bring with your experience on the town side is tremendous. And it was nice to see, everyone just agreeing so wholeheartedly in our panel that you were the perfect choice.
Thank you. It's great to hear.
So,
First of all, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for coming to Chelmsford right now, and we're very, very excited about it. But with that, I'd like to also thank Dr. Frank Tiano for his hard work, and certainly Frank Antonelli and the entire administration for working hard on this. You come with great reviews, great recommendations, and this is one more step closer to solving some of the issues that we have at Chelmsford. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You got some big shoes you got to fill, so
That's okay.
we know
I'm
you
up
can
for
do it.
you okay?
Well, I also was on the subcommittee. I was very excited when I saw your resume, and even more so when we interviewed you, and, the ease at which you were able to speak and also communicate, not just in the school business side, but also the town side. And so that you made everyone feel very, very comfortable with what knowledge you had and what experience you can bring to the position. And so you'll have some challenges ahead of yourself, and I'm certainly sure that you'll be able to meet them all successfully. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
I think it's really a good thing that a couple of you mentioned the members of the town side being involved in the process, because one of our goals is to, as a committee, is to work more closely with the town, and this definitely happened in this process, and so it's a good thing to bring up here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Okay, Mr. Superintendent, we're going to look at the district transportation, out-of-district transportation.
I'm going to turn that right over to Frank Antonelli, who had spearheaded this bidding process along with Brad Brooks, our Director of Student Services. Frank?
Yes, so we went out to bid with the school districts of Billerica and Tewksbury for out-of-district special education transportation needs. You have the bid summary in front of you. It was sent out in your package. We received two bids, I should say. One was the Merrimack Education Center. It's for a 3-year bid, and their total for a 3-year bid was $3,086,297. And we also received a bid from Trombley Motor Coach Service, and their total bid was $2,327,861. There is a difference of $758,000 over a 3-year period. I'm recommending that the school committee award the 3-year bid to the lowest responsible bidder, which is Trombley Motor Coach Service. We have checked their references carefully. They are a good company. They will meet all the requirements of the bid specifications that we put out. We're working with them right now on the in-town special education transportation, and we think they're a good fit for the out-of-town district transportation for Chelmsford. So I would recommend that you award the bid to Trombley Motor Coach Service.
Any discussion?
I have some questions.
Sure.
How much did it cost us last year to do the out-of-district transportation?
It's approximately $1 million. That's what we have budgeted for next year. So this fee that you see right here is lower than what we have budgeted. However, I do know, as you know, that sometimes you have additional students come in and go out, so that could be adjusted up or down. And I know also that there are a few students that were not included on that bid, which will mean that that price will go up somewhat. But that's the way the bid specification was written. If there are additional students, then we'll be charged for those additional students. What we have here is a bid comparing apples with apples. They both bid on the same type of services. Trombley, I believe, has some vehicles that are a little bit larger, and so there's a little bit of an economy there by using a larger vehicle for special education services. They use these same buses in other communities, and the people, the administrators that we talked to and the various school departments said good things about Trombley Motor Coach and their service to special needs students.
So this bid also, because I didn't read your specs, I'm sorry, also
There
includes...
were no specs.
There wasn't anything?
No.
Okay. It also includes monitors?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so it's just not the transportation itself?
That's
Are they,
correct. And in some cases, there are wheelchair vans involved, so that bumps the price up just a little bit.
because I know that when we switched quite a few years ago, there was some concerns with, monitors, and then how many students would be on a bus and all of that, because some of the times it's better to have the buses smaller to accommodate some of the needs of those students, because they can't handle larger groups of students. So do we have that factor into this bid also?
We do have that factor in. That's an excellent question, because there are some students who need to ride by themselves, and in that case, they will be on a separate vehicle. Other students need a monitor, and they can drive very easily with other students if there is a monitor on board the bus.
And Evelyn, to your point, when we had switched vendors a few years ago, Brad Brooks is prepared to send out an email tomorrow to all of our parents that this would impact. Give them the information in terms of, what Trombley services that they provide, which is identical to MEC, but also to put together a forum for them and explain and introduce them and so forth. So that's, pending your vote, that's the next step, to reach out to folks.
So basically, this administration office went out to bid, got a couple of bids, and you saved us well over $200,000, closer to $220,000, with the same level, if not better service.
That's right.
Well done.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. Trombley is a subsidiary of NRT, is that right?
They're a separate company. There is a owner who owns Trombley and owns NRT. So if, for example, Trombley has an issue in not having a bus available,
Right.
they can rely on NRT to back them up.
Yeah, because that would be one of the questions, is how many people do they have that would be available for a resource if somebody has a problem in the morning? It looked like from the Trombley website, they say they have 4 people on staff, but, and I don't know if that's including everybody at NRT or if that's just the folks at Trombley, and then they've got an additional layer of backup with NRT.
I didn't look at the website, but I believe they're just talking about Trombley, but they do have the backup with NRT.
All right. And as always, Brad Brooks, or the Director of Student Services here in Chelmsford, would be a point of contact for parents if they had issues.
Very definitely.
And there's no, just following that, there's no additional charges if they go to backup with NRT?
No.
In the contract? Okay.
No,
Sorry.
there aren't,
Just wanna make
there
sure.
aren't additional charges.
Just so that we're clear, some of the requirements that we heard about last time were video capabilities on each bus, GPSs on each bus.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I sent an email to Brad Brooks today. He did confirm that they have both of those things with the buses. They're properly equipped. I had also asked a question about whether or not this was an expansion of their geographic territory. It sounds like it's not, especially if they're part of NRT or working with NRT. I have a little bit of concern about how this was brought forward to us. This is very short notice to be given a bus line that I've never heard of before. It would be one thing if it had been identified as NRT. I understand that you can't preload too much, but I think it would have been helpful if we'd had some idea that this was coming. We could have had some conversations with people, gotten some kind of feedback. My proposal would be that whenever an RFP is issued, that this committee gets a copy of the RFP, because the bid went out. But I mean, you had mentioned that you were out to bid.
That's right.
A month ago, probably.
More.
Yeah, so I think that would be helpful as we move forward. There are a number of contracts that are up this year, right?
There are a
Including
few.
milk and things like that.
Yep.
I don't know that every one of those needs to have a discussion here within the committee, but if we could get a look at those RFPs when they're sent out, it helps us kind of prepare for the votes that are coming up.
Well, I think you said that at the proper time, because the young lady in the audience, I'm sure, will be happy to provide that information.
One of the recommendations that MASBO had when we sat and we spoke to them was that the Finance Budget Subcommittee would also review those, or
Okay?
take a look at them in advance, and then that way, then it can be channeled easily enough that way, and if there's any changes. So it can go in either direction. It doesn't matter to me as long as we see what they are.
I think that's another good idea, to review it with the Finance Subcommittee, and I see Michelle writing feverishly over there, so I'm sure she'll be doing that as well.
Any other questions or further discussion?
Does this impact, my memory is unclear. Are we out of providing buses for our CHIPS preschoolers? Did we make that final cut? Or does this include transportation for those preschoolers?
This is
Out-of-district.
for out-of-district transportation.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't
Fine.
done in-district yet.
Okay. I didn't know how they were categorized.
I have one last question, and it's more of a clarification. I was looking at the budget this afternoon, and I don't see exactly where that $1 million is put into the FY16 budget. Is that because we've decided to use some of the circuit breaker money to cover transportation costs?
No, what happened last year
So we saved
is that
$200,000.
Just
would be a
one
a
plus,
decision
right?
was made
Over the course of the term of the
to
contract.
budget
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the special education allocation grant rather than pay for it out of the LEA. So there was $900,000 for this year for special education, and when we talked and reviewed this budget with the student services director, we allocated $1 million in the special education in the allocation grant.
So the savings aren't necessarily going to be reflected in a particular line item of the operating budget.
If you were to save $200,000, let's say, as an example, then that would be that much less that you would spend in your special education grant. And that would mean there would be expenses that you would have budgeted in your general fund
Right.
that could be picked up in your special education grant. And all of that would be discussed, I'm sure, very thoroughly before any decision was made as to where that savings was to come from and to go.
Okay.
But it is a clear savings of $200,000 plus that we'll be able to count on.
I would not say that you can count on a savings of $200,000 plus for these reasons, these two reasons that I mentioned a few minutes ago. One is that you could have additional students move into the district, and that could eat up some of the
Very
cost. And the other is that this particular bid specification did not include some of the students that should have been incorporated in the bid spec. So those are going to be additional costs. I would anticipate that it could be in the vicinity of $75,000.
Now, are those students who are under some kind of a review for outplacement, or?
That's it.
Okay.
Some come with reviews, and
Okay.
we just weren't sure about
Right.
everyone at that particular time, but as time moves on, you become more and more sure of who's going to be going out of district and who's not.
Frank, when do we realize exactly what the number is? Is there a time of the year?
As far as this transportation bid is concerned, it could go, you may know about it, say, in February or March, but you're not going to realize the savings until June 30th, when the year is complete.
Okay, thank you, Frank.
You're welcome.
Need a motion?
All set?
I'm fine.
Okay, yeah, entertain a motion.
I make a motion. Accept.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous? Thank you very much. The next item of business I asked to be put on the agenda, we did previously talk about liaisons, but there were two reasons that I felt we needed to come back to this. One being that there were two forms that we were working from, and I didn't have the other form, and that had things on it that I didn't have. And the other thing was that Mr. Rigney, being chair, had a limited number of involvements officially in committees, although he went to a lot of different things. So I thought I would like to hear from him and other people about things that we might change on here, and I think there were some other things that were on the other form that I didn't have. So if we could just kind of have an open discussion on this, I think we can work it out in a fairly short period of time.
I'll say the only thing that leaps to my eye of something that's not on here would be the finance and the maintenance subcommittees.
All right.
And you were proposing to add one more, I think, in the new policy too, right?
No, we have policy subcommittee, we have finance budget, we have recognition, which we really haven't done much on. And isn't there a subcommittee on superintendent goals, where two of you meet with the
No,
superintendent?
that would be the thing that you're adding
Oh, okay.
in the policy.
Because there was two people that always did that
Nick and I.
in the past,
Well,
what, 4 or 5
that
years?
was, yeah, I mean, I
It's
think that,
relatively
that had
new?
been, that was set as an ad hoc thing, and every year, and the only meeting they had was the one right before the goals came to the committee as a whole. It wasn't so much a standing subcommittee
Okay.
that worked throughout the year. Although, if you
It is a
wanted to,
subcommittee.
if you wanted to do something like that, you could. I mean, maybe it would be, it might be better as a committee goals subcommittee, somebody to, check and see if we're on track or not. But it hadn't been formalized since it only met once really a year.
Does anyone want to support that idea of having that, or is
I
that
think it
something?
would be a good idea to meet quarterly.
For goals,
Yeah.
I'm agnostic.
Okay.
I-
Committee goals?
How can I increase your faith?
We just need to
You want a
understand.
subcommittee to meet with the superintendent quarterly?
We do it now once a year.
And teach me your mindset behind quarterly, just,
Just a comfort level that what, if something comes up, we have a one-on-one discussion how this might affect the goals.
Mhm.
If nothing comes up, we don't have to formally meet.
okay.
But it would be nice to have that avenue in place. Let's sit down, let's talk, especially when we're talking about someone coming on new.
Okay.
Actually, if I could make a recommendation, Al, in terms of just going back and looking at the superintendent evaluation process that you folks have agreed to, in terms of, the mid-year summary, and providing written feedback as well as the written feedback at the end of the school year as well. And also, too, to make sure, no, I think that's good.
You think we should do it?
So you think, you're suggesting that we do institute that subcommittee, and it should at least meet biannually, if not quarterly, to have that
Well,
reflection?
Per what the evaluation tool looks like, there should be a mid-year review.
Yeah.
Yes.
A formative review, and there should be a summative review, and there should be written feedback in terms of both of those, in terms of those goals. So I would
That's a good
recommend that the
point.
committee follow the process and follow through on it.
I've increased
You've
your faith.
increased my faith. You're good.
Any other suggestions for things that are not here? And we can look at what we want to do. All right. As a courtesy, Mr. Igny, the things, because, we made changes quickly and you didn't really have a chance to get involved. Are there things that you'd like to be involved with that we can accommodate?
The big one, I really feel strongly that the maintenance subcommittee is necessary for this committee and for this town. And so I'd ask to be appointed to that. The other thing I have is that recycling meets on Thursdays, which is the same as FinCom most of the time. So if somebody wanted to take recycling,
No, well,
They
we
could
always have.
probably
I
use
don't know, it was Mike and
a fresh set of eyes.
Do they meet regularly?
So he suggests-
I would say it's probably 6 or 7 months out of the year. They tend not to meet during the summer very much.
So he
And
wants
then they'll
a-
miss one here and there.
And it's Thursdays?
It's first Thursday of the month. Other than that, I'm pretty good with what's here.
Okay. I can pick it up unless somebody has, some people are really interested in that. Not that I'm not, but,
Yeah.
if anybody would like.
If you need some help, I'll throw my hat in the
Well,
ring.
I think you've got plenty of major ones.
Okay.
I'll take it, just because it's,
All right, make me the alternate. I mean,
okay.
I can look, just looking at the list that, Chelmsford, that CHS PTO meets the same night as Board of Selectmen, so I might be calling in help on that.
I think we need to feel free
Okay.
to make, I'd like us to err on having people at meetings more than we need to, rather than,
Yeah.
So anytime anybody needs help with,
Okay.
I'd like to have that kind of an atmosphere.
And then I had told you that in the fall, you and I can switch off on Byam because Eliana will be there. Just like with the Harrington, 3 of them will be over there. So,
Want to do them all? How many more grandchildren?
so you're gonna.
I can't influence how many more.
Okay. No, that's fine.
But I'm just saying that I can check and see. I don't know when they're going to have it, if it's going to interfere with something else. Because right now, I have also South Row, because they wanted me down there. And that and Harrington, sometimes I got to get them to work together so they're not all on the same nights. They switched off quite nicely on a Monday, Tuesday, but it still gets to be, I'm hoping it's not going to be as hectic as it was this past year on Tuesdays. So, but I'm just saying that on the buy-in
That's
one,
fine.
with you.
If you don't mind, I'll stay on maintenance with you because I just started to get, I was with Nick on that.
Mhm.
And finance,
It's you two right now,
is
right?
that something, does that dovetail with something we already have?
No, Finance Subcommittee, Sal and myself are on that currently.
Okay, it's just not listed on here for,
Neither
No,
is
but we're going
maintenance.
to add it under other subcommittees.
Yeah, so maintenance and finance subcommittee should be under other subcommittees.
Yeah, the finance budget.
So this is, I'm a little bit confused. The finance committee that we brought up,
Is the Town Finance Committee.
all right,
That's under town boards.
right,
The Finance Subcommittee is up under other subcommittees.
okay, I get it.
So the town boards Mike, and then I'm the alternate. We always can, what we've done in the past is
Yeah.
if we can't make, we call somebody else, just to make sure that we're covered, see if anybody else can cover it, if somehow or another that evening we have other commitments.
So they're not really different, they're just in the wrong, that was in the wrong place?
No,
No,
they are
no.
different. One's the subcommittee.
One's a school
right.
committee subcommittee, and the other is the town finance
All
committee.
right,
Mr. Gilroy.
all right. Anything else? I think that-
Just the superintendent review subcommittee,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Well, also, the goals, we didn't do that either. I just wrote it down, but we didn't fill it, did we?
We could do that. I mean, do we need
As
to
a
have
whole committee of the whole?
a subcommittee for goals? We could make that an agenda item,
Okay.
once in a while during the year.
Just as an update.
Yeah, it's probably
Okay.
not a bad time to review if we're gonna hit our marks by June anyway.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So, just so I'm learning. So at the beginning of the year, you create these goals for the superintendent. And if I understand Frank, there are 2 times throughout the year where you're going to meet with the superintendent and you're going to review. Wouldn't you review those goals at that point also?
The superintendent goals, I think, are envisioned as part of a larger overall process that starts with the school improvement plans. And then you've got the district improvement plan, and the superintendent goals should align with the district improvement plan. And we also do our own goal setting, typically once the superintendent goals have been set. And so you're trying to get everybody aligned, right? What they're doing at the schools meshes with what they're doing within the district. What the district is doing meshes with what the superintendent is focusing on, and the school committee as a whole as well. So, do we have to discuss the school committee goals at the same time we do the formative assessment of the superintendent? No, we don't have to. It's not a bad trigger, though. The state of Massachusetts has this circular improvement concept, where you set your, you do your planning, you set your goals, you work towards them, you evaluate how you're progressing, and it just kind of you're trying to create a virtuous circle, basically.
Can I just jump
Sure.
in for just a second? So, only because I'm your educator evaluation liaison for the state. So everybody has goals. So the superintendent, central office people have 4 goals. One of them is a student learning goal. It's attached to student learning outcomes, professional practice goal, and then the 2 additional goals are the ones that Mr. Rigney is talking about in regards to school improvement plans. So you want everything to be in alignment with that piece. From there, after you set the goals, you actually have action steps that are measurable with dates. So if I were to say I'm going to do this goal, steps 1, 2, and 3 would be started, say, in September. I would finish step 1, 2, and 3 by November, and then continue on with my next goals. They're also evaluated by the rubric that is set forth for superintendents. So you would have to measure them up against the 4 standards: student learning, teaching all students, management, and then community engagement. So those are that's how you evaluate them.
I see.
It would be best if, like you were talking about, if the school committee goals, you have your goals, you also have technically your professional practice goals, other things that you would like to do that don't necessarily measure up to student learning goals, then that would then push towards what the superintendent's doing. Then we bring it to the school level, bring it to the department level, then teachers are able to write their goals. So everybody's working towards the same thing to actually get something done.
So, once again, thank you for explaining this to me. I'm new to the board, so I'm just going to ask a lot of questions. So let's say we're working towards these goals, the superintendent is working towards these goals, and he doesn't hit one of the goals. Does he come back to us and say, I didn't quite get there, or our team didn't get there, and he or she reports it to us? Or is it some other mechanism to understand that we're not on track. Is
No,
that a fair
they would
question?
report it to you. You wouldn't wait till the last minute to say, oh, hey, I didn't get to my goals, just as we wouldn't do with teachers.
Right.
One of the things, because they're SMART goals, one of them is it has to be rigorous, but it also has to be realistic. So that's working with the committee to make sure you're not going to say, okay, I'm going to put in brand-new carpeting in all the schools. That's not going to happen. That's really not realistic. So what you would do is make sure it's a realistic goal. But what happens is you set the goals in the beginning. You also do a formative assessment. That's the check-in. That's to say, okay, did you go through your steps? Where are we at? Yeah, maybe that wasn't so realistic. What should we do to adjust it to make sure that this goal actually is met? Because it's not a I got you kind of process like, oh, you made this goal, sorry you didn't get to it, too bad. It's to make improvement. So you would want to be revisiting your action steps often. You would want to see if it's still in alignment, and you would want to see if it's still something that you want to move forward with.
So it's really up to the superintendent to keep us abreast of those action items. If he or she starts to fall behind, they let us know in advance.
I mean, yes and no. It should go back and forth. So you both should be working together, parallel together. You shouldn't wait till, oh, did you get to it? Oh, I didn't tell you, you didn't tell me. There should be set dates for that as to when you're going to actually visit these goals
So-
and visit these action steps.
So, Dr. Tiano, with all due respect, do other schools have a subcommittee to review goals for the superintendent, or is it just this process right here, sir?
I can't speak to what other school departments do, Sal.
I've actually looked at this a little bit, and some districts have an explicit subcommittee, others do not. Pretty much everybody has finance and policy.
Sure.
After that, curriculum is something that happens a lot. The superintendent, like a working group, maintenance occasionally, although I think for us, maintenance is important because it's outside the containment of the school district itself, right? So we're kind of picking and choosing a little bit.
Okay.
If you're worried about a whole, I'd be more worried about not having a curriculum subcommittee than having a superintendent goal subcommittee. But I'd say that my experience here has been that the curriculum, there's a lot of presentations on the curriculum. I feel like the committee is not suffering from a lack of knowledge about the curriculum. I think the idea of having the superintendent goal committee is not a bad one. It's just a checkpoint, and it makes sure that we're moving along. The educator evaluations have been adopted by the state. It's really an attempt to put in best practices, and so for us to add this subcommittee that hasn't been there in the past, I think is not so much that we're trying to invent the wheel or reinvent it, but we're aligning ourselves with what is being recommended by the state as sound educational management.
Thank you, Mike.
Is the written reports, is that a required part of the process?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
has it been carried out?
Not necessarily.
Well, I think in that, if that's the case, I think if there's going to be a written response, I think we really need a subcommittee, because writing a document as a committee of the whole is not very effective.
Well, I mean, four of us at least have gone through it
Yeah.
last year with the summative
Yeah.
review. Yeah, I mean, you have to find a way to
If we're going to
kind of
write it
stitch it
down,
together.
I don't know, I'm not forcing will, but it just seems to me that it would be helpful to have people who follow it through to write the document in the end, at those two times.
You have to give a summative rating, because that would have to
Yeah.
then be uploaded into EPUMS for the
Okay.
superintendent as well.
Is that satisfactory? Would that be considered the written?
You would do the written piece, so that's the written feedback, because everybody receives the written feedback.
Yeah.
So when you do the goal setting, you would give feedback to create the goals, then there's a final document. You would get written feedback in the formative assessment, okay, based on the rubric. And then, again, through the rubric, because there's forms for this,
Yeah.
through the rubric, you would then give the summative write-up and then an overall rating. So you have to rate the superintendent on one on each standard. So the 4 standards, there should be 4 ratings, and then an overall rating based on those 4 standards.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is if we fill out the form, is that considered an adequate written response?
Yes.
Do we have any way of knowing if districts do more than that? I mean, on one hand, it's nice, it would be easier, but I don't know, it just seems inadequate in some way. Do you understand what I was getting at?
You want more of a narrative?
Well,
Because the
I
form you can
wonder
put-
if that's necessary. I mean, I'm not looking for work. In some ways, I'm sure that it's easy to fill out the form, but
Well, I think the best thing for the committee to do is to look at, like, and I can take names out, is to show you what this looks like for
Okay.
another administrator, and perhaps what it looks like for a teacher as well, so you can compare to see what kind of information goes into it,
That
and then
probably
you
would be
morph
good.
it, because although we all follow the same procedures and the dates, we all
Okay.
kind of have our own little flair. It's like teaching. We all teach the same subject, I teach the same standards, but you and I would probably do it a little differently. So
Okay.
you need some examples, and then you can take those examples and then kind of create it into your own narrative, your own voice.
what's the will of the committee? Do you think this is a good idea to have this with a couple of people who work on it more specifically, or would you rather just work as a committee when it comes to those at least 2 times a year?
Barbara has convinced me that I think this is a good idea, and I,
How do you feel about, though, swapping out meeting with the superintendent, 2-on-2? 2-on-1, I'm sorry.
as
So,
opposed to,
as opposed to, like, it's always Nick and I who met. Why not, you and Sal one time, Evelyn, myself, you and Evelyn, so that we're all, or do you feel that would be too disjointed?
Well, if you,
maybe that's disjointed, and
Okay.
as I think about this, maybe one way to do it would be to let the subcommittee facilitate that sort of work, right? If written responses or written reviews are appropriate, then it'd be the responsibility of the subcommittee to kind of schedule that, to calendar it for the other members of the committee as a whole, and see to it that those forms are filled out or those responses are given.
So it's an
And then-
oversight committee as well?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
And perhaps they would have the members of that subcommittee would have an additional meeting with the superintendent right before and another right after the reviews, right? To say, just make sure everybody's on the same page. This is how the review's going to work. They collect that information, and they sit again with the superintendent and say, look, this is what we've got.
Okay.
And again, the point of the educator evaluations is to stimulate a conversation, to talk about what you're doing well, what you can do better. And so I think Al's right that, just putting down 3s and 4s on a piece of paper, that's not really where the usefulness of this sort of tool is. You want to have that conversation. But by swapping out, the superintendent evaluation is a complicated process. It might not be a bad idea to have a couple of people who focus on that and kind of really know the ins and outs of it. Just like, you have somebody to do that with capital, you have somebody to do it with the budget.
policy.
Let people focus a little bit, let people specialize a little bit.
Also, there's a consistency.
Yeah, I like the idea of a narrative, but, as a committee of the whole, given the choice between putting a 3 or 4 down or writing a few paragraphs on each topic, I
Well,
think,
so the summative review will always be the committee as a whole.
oh, yeah.
Right? That cannot be delegated.
Right.
I'm less clear on if there are strictures on the formative review, Dr. Hirsch.
No, there's no restrictions on, it's a form, you still have to follow the 4 standards. When you're writing up your narrative, you can't.
But it could be done by a subcommittee or
That could-
facilitated by a subcommittee
Right, because
rather
you're
than
not giving a
having
final
to.
overall
right.
rating on a
Okay.
formative. A formative is just the check-in piece. And then the summative, you would have to have the committee. And there should be written response back for feedback.
Okay.
Is anyone interested in serving on the subcommittee?
I am.
Anyone else?
I will too.
Thank you. Is there anything else that
You're the chair.
All right.
thought of that we need to clarify or add to this summary of liaison appointments?
I had a question.
Yeah.
And it's also, it's whether or not people agree or they don't agree. On the Chelmsford Business Association, where Sal is in business in town, and I assume he's part of the business association, that maybe as a liaison, that would be more up your alley for you to do something along those lines. Not to take it away from Al, but where Al is chair, he has so many other responsibilities. It may be something you want to think about. I don't want to put you on the spot. I apologize if I've done that.
No, no problem. Thank you for pointing that out. Mr. Chairman, whatever you need.
Well, let me ask it a different way. Is it something that you would do, you know,
Would you be going to those meetings?
regularly or
The
periodically?
meetings regularly, but I have no problem in reaching out to
Well,
them.
periodically, because I've talked with Mr. Harrington and said, you know, I'll come anytime, you know, but I'm not a businessman, so I don't go regularly, but I'd feel more comfortable in asking you to do it if it, you know, was something that you might do periodically anyway, but I'm not forcing
I
you.
welcome the opportunity. I'll do it.
Okay.
As we get going, things change on these different committees in terms of relationships and stuff. If something either becomes too much, you know, like Barbara and I switch schools, you know, anything like that that makes it easier, don't hesitate to ask, because we can just communicate the changes later on. Okay. All right, thank you for that input. I think we've cleared up some of that.
May I ask just one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Only because I'm unfamiliar with the process. Dr. Hirsch, will somebody be getting me, the new guy on the board, like when they meet, you know, the different times, the different dates,
To set the goals and to do
No,
all of that,
for all these committees?
I would assume that would be
Probably.
the...
That would come from the
It depends on the organization, I think it's safe to say, because some might take the initiative, but some you'll never hear from if
Yeah.
you don't. take
I've
the
never been
initiative.
to a SPED PAC meeting. I don't know if they meet
I usually
anymore.
just call, if you're
But,
part of the
you know,
PTO, you call.
On the calendar, on the town website, you know, you can check, Board of Selectmen meets on Monday, FinCom, they used to meet on Wednesdays and Thursdays, it depends, you know, and it's on the calendar, so, Planning Board, Recycling Committee, all those.
And again, as already has been said, if there's what you consider to be an important meeting and we have a conflict, just tell,
Yeah.
you know, tell
Right.
one of the other members of the board and we'll try to cover.
And with Capital, you can certainly check with John Souza or with Paul Cohen, because their job is sort of finished. They seem to have more meetings in the late fall and January. You know, that's when they usually start, because they're putting together their budget. But they would be the people to reach out to.
And that's my point, there are certain point of contacts. with
Yes.
these. Okay,
Yeah.
good. No problem.
What's that? All right, the next item of business is the meeting schedule. I went through with my calendar and it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I didn't see any, I was looking for holidays and things that, you know, which I'm sure you did anyway, but I didn't see any
That's the big one.
problems. Did anyone come across anything that looked to be a problem?
I never know until, you know,
Well, again, if something, because of, you know, conflicts or anything else that we become aware of, the earlier we can make a change, the better, because the community gets used to whatever our schedule is, and when we make a change, sometimes they don't get to make the change.
How do you feel that week of July 7th, you know, being the week of July 4th? Do people go away on the board?
It's not unusual to skip a meeting
Yeah.
in July or August.
right.
Or both, depending on how busy it is. But because of things like, you know, the field trips, we're not going to have to be approving that sort of stuff. Sometimes we do it as a workshop too, just kind of an
So
informal.
we can make that on
a
the
more
fly as we
informal
get
Yeah.
closer.
Sometimes we look at the agenda and say,
Yeah.
there's not a lot going on.
Okay, then now, understanding that there can be adjustments, entertain a motion to approve the school committee meeting schedule that's before us.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Unanimous.
Al, if I could just bring up a point where we did cancel a meeting at the end of April, and this meeting currently was not on our original schedule. You and I had discussed, I'm not sure if you discussed it with the remainder of the committee in terms of canceling next Tuesday's meeting, the 12th, and then getting back on the regular schedule for the 26th of March. I believe it's the 9th and the 23rd of June. Because you and I had talked about back-to-back
Right.
meetings. I know you wanted to hold this one where we had, due to town meeting, canceled the last one.
Okay?
I'm good with that. Again, if something comes up, we could always meet briefly.
Well, I'd like to ask a question with regard to next Tuesday night. We're not scheduled for a meeting, but if I'd like to move ahead with interviewing candidates for the interim position, and I'd like to get a sense of, from the committee, if to be able to attend, if we're able to set up any interviews for that night, it might be a good time.
Yep.
Is there anyone?
I'm able.
Yeah, Tuesdays are always free.
Okay. So I'll give you as much notice as I can. Related to that, so I don't have to come back to this right away, if as a committee, we've agreed not to interview a large number of people. But if there is an individual or a couple of individuals that you want to look at that have not been brought to my attention, I'd like to know that so that I can reach out to them.
What size of a pool are you considering?
3 or 4.
Okay.
I think, we probably have 50 names, so, we just can't get into a large search, and time's a factor also. So unless somebody disagrees, that's the size of the pool, and whether it's 3 or 4, and if someone emerged that, somebody's excited about, you can let me know. So if you just tentatively hold next Tuesday, so that if something develops,
Sounds good.
we'd be able to do that. Okay. Monthly financial report.
Okay,
Turn that right over to Frank.
thank you.
Thank you.
Take one and pass it down, please.
Thank you, Frank.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I just gave it to
We're on.
Do you want to give that? We'll share that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I touched it.
this here is a report for the student activities. We have the Parker School, the McCarthy School, and the high school. This is the second month that you've seen these types of reports. You see on line 6, column C, that the balance in the checking account is $9,400. And as established by school committee policy on line 7, it is under the $12,000 in the policy that was set. We reviewed, Evelyn and I, and Barbara, and
Al.
and Al was there as well, and Frank, the policy on setting the amount authorized. And I discussed that it may be a good idea to look at this, to bump it up a little bit, particularly at the intermediate schools, because you're going to be seeing a lot of activity in the next couple of months, and they'll need some money in those accounts. So I'm going to leave that to Michelle to take a look at these over the next couple of months, and then come back to the school committee at some time, perhaps with a recommendation to bump it up a little bit.
When I also had sent you all those policies to go to MASBO too, with the
Yeah.
corrections and things, they may come up with a suggestion also, and then we can work with Michelle to see how she feels about those numbers. We don't know what they're going to suggest.
I did
either.
send those policies to them.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
You're welcome. So, on line 6, you have the checking account balance of $9,400, then you have your savings account balance of $57,000. They both equal the $66,000 as the total amount at the Parker School, and you see the balances for each of the individual clubs or activities. On the second page, you have the McCarthy Middle School. And here's an example of a school that has more money than the school committee policy of $12,000. I'm not too concerned about that right now because, like I said, in May and June, I think they'll be spending more money. So not a big concern, but certainly you want to keep an eye on that. So they have 15,400 plus 53 in their savings for a total of 69,000. You see on line 17 that there's a negative balance there. I talked with the person who prepared this report, and she informed me that they have received approximately $5,000 a few days after that, but too late to be included in this particular report. So not a concern. And the same with the field trips. It's kind of a fluid thing depending on when you'll actually have the report printed out. So we go from there to our high school, and the high school, of course, is much larger, for a total of both accounts of $187,000. They have all positive balances in their accounts, and you'll notice that when you look at these reports that they have been reviewed and signed. So that right there is the second month of receiving the student activities reconciliation reports. Going to move on to our grant reports.
That's a quick question.
Sure,
Each of these schools has something called a principal's account,
that's right.
which I was told did not exist, but it does, apparently. The amount varies significantly from McCarthy to Parker to the high school. What does that money represent, and why the variations?
That money has accumulated over the years.
Okay.
It's hard to say exactly why they have those sums in there. Some schools may be getting money for school pictures, or they may have received money in the past for school pictures, and it just went into the principal's account. Another source of income for that particular account is interest earned. In the days when the interest was higher, we would receive interest, and that could be going into the principal's account. But again, I can't say with any certainty because it has accumulated over a number of years.
Are we currently funding that line item?
Funding it?
Yeah. Is there anything from our school budget going to that
Oh, no,
principal's account budget?
no, nothing in here to
Okay.
the student
And the
activities.
PTOs have traditionally given some monies to the
That's right.
principals every year. I assume that's where it would go?
It could go in there, or the PTOs could say, we would really like to donate this money for the choir this year, or any
Right,
other
right.
example. But generally, it could go into the principal's account.
Okay.
Does he have discretion on what he spends it on, Frank?
He does. The principal is the overseer of all of these accounts here. So
All of the accounts, not just the principal's account?
That's correct.
Okay.
The principal is the person who signs the checks and disperses the funds.
But let's assume that there was a particular field trip or something that we wanted the kids to have at the McCarthy Middle School. Well, he has 25,000, the principal there in his account. He could technically, if he wanted to, use that to help bridge a funding gap.
He or she could at their discretion.
And why are there no accounts for the elementary schools? Why don't we have a sheet for each elementary school, just the middle and high school?
It's never been set up through the elementary schools. I did have a conversation with them. There were some pros and cons, but as a group, they preferred not to have an individual account of this nature.
They tend not to have the variety of the activity groups that the middle schools and the high school do, right, at the elementary level. But it's, there's enrichment, but this isn't enrichment, right? This isn't PTO money. This is money within the school.
Can we get a breakdown of what is in the principal's account, where they got them from? I think that may be helpful. To just ask.
I'm not sure that
Seems
they
to be
would
a
be able
difference of
to give you a
opinion.
breakdown of
What
those
you just said,
accounts.
what Barbara said.
This
Barbara
is
asked whether or
not
not.
money from the PTO.
No, the principal's account. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about all of the
Well, I don't know if
activity.
it's
She
fundraising.
asked him whether or not
It might be
some of the money
but I
was
was
in there
assuming
from
fundraising.
what the PTO might have given them, and
I don't.
you don't
I'm-
know.
I would think.
I don't recall being at a PTO meeting where they voted to deposit money into the principal's account. I've
We
been to a
have.
lot of PTO meetings where they've said, look, we have money to help defray the cost of this field trip or this enrichment, but they don't give it just to the principal
Well-
and say, you've got it.
I can only speak for Center School, McCarthy, and the Chelmsford High School PTO. Center School, every year, we gave a certain amount of money to the principal and a certain amount of money to the nurse. It was their money to do with, same at McCarthy. The high school, we don't do that. But at those three schools, we always did. This is your money to use as you see fit.
Evelyn,
It's happened in other
in
ones.
answer to your question, I think it would be hard for the principals to say where that money came from.
Okay.
Because your
fine.
principals, when you look at their tenure, their number of years of service, haven't been here, I don't think, am I wrong, Frank? They haven't been here for like 10 years at
No,
these three
Kurt's been there
schools.
6, Jeff probably 4.
4,
Yeah.
yeah, so they could have had some money as a carryover when they came.
Where are these line items funded? For instance, the high school I'm looking at, from A to Z, or A to W. The money for, pick anything, field hockey, is that money they have raised
Yes.
in fundraising?
Mhm.
And that is that's the same for Barker and McCarthy?
All of these accounts, yeah. This is money that they have raised as a club.
Not fees, though?
No, you're thinking
That's a
about,
student activity account?
that's a different
Okay.
account, which we'll review when we talk about revolving accounts and
Got
bank
it.
accounts. Okay?
Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
So, looking at the Parker sheet, because it's the one on top,
Yes?
line 26 totals
Yes?
the individual clubs, and then line 27 is outstanding checks.
That's right.
And the
PTO money.
sum total there is the same as the total account balance and the Quicken balance. What are the outstanding checks? That's money that's
Outstanding.
coming in? That's not money that's going out?
No, those are checks that are written and have not been reconciled yet. We sent a check to Mike Rigney for a field trip, for providing transportation, what have you. At the time when they reconciled these bank statements, they did not have that check. It was not reconciled.
It hadn't been cashed yet.
Exactly.
So the 66,000, it reflects 52,000 that's actually available, and another 14,000 that has essentially been encumbered.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, moving on to grants. Pass these out here.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah.
There we go. She didn't get one.
Okay, so the grants, I'm just going to highlight some of the expenditures and the revenues throughout these grants. We look at page 2, we see E-rate. So this has been set up for monies that we collect for E-rate, which we get as discounts from companies that provide telecommunications services to us. So far, we've collected $64,000. We have expended $36,000 on technology expenses, internet, for example, and we have encumbered $23,000. If you looked at last month, you wouldn't see those numbers right there. All you saw were the revenue, but this is the first time that we've actually started using those expenses this year. The next grant on page 3 is Title III. I just wanted to point out to you that that expires in November. So when you look at the very first line, you see professional salaries, and you see that not much has been spent. Well, that's because a lot of it will be spent probably over the summer. When you look at page 5, you see, I'm going back to your earlier question, Mike, about transportation. This is the grant, the special allocation grant. When you look at the object code 747, transportation, we had budgeted $900,000. So far, we've spent $579,000 and encumbered $264,000. I know that we will be spending that additional $56,000, and I had a conversation with Brad as well as Shirley about updating that encumbrance to cover it for the rest of the year. And when you look at page 7, I just wanted to tell you, with all of these grants, I like to review them with the people who are supervising the grants. In this particular grant, I did review with Brad, and he will be eating away at that $35,270 in contracted services. On page 8, that grant expires in August, just for your information. That's the Title I grant.
Now, can I ask a question on the Title I?
Yes.
You have one school in town that qualifies for Title I? Is that Harrington? Is that the only?
Yeah, actually, technically, we have one school, and it would be the McCarthy Middle School. You can do
Okay.
it two ways. You could do it by the school, or you could do it by grade span.
Oh,
So
okay.
we did it by grade span this year so that we could get more interventionists at the elementary level.
Okay, so the grade span by choosing McCarthy includes all the feeder schools for McCarthy?
Right, so it would allow us to put interventionists at the elementary level where we would most likely need them.
Perfect, thank you.
And on page 9, you see the circuit breaker, that line 770 for tuitions. We're anticipating $2.3 million. In addition, as you know, the town meeting said, please use $165,000. That's why you see a negative amount over in the right-hand corner of $159,000. That's really going to be used from the carryover. And I guess that's probably about it for those grants. Those are the grants. And next, we can talk about the revolving accounts. Thank you. Exercise. So the first page there is for our cafeteria. You can see that so far, it shows that we have collected $651,000 at the end of March. And by the way, I did want to mention to you that we have already reviewed April figures, so we'll be ready at the next school committee meeting to review that with the school committee. We got behind, as you know, because we had a lot of things going on, including the budget and town meeting and all of that business.
You say April, you mean April the month or the person?
I
Cafeteria, so I get confused.
I meant April the month.
Okay.
Yes. So this is what we have here for the cafeteria. We've collected more revenue than our expenses. A little bit concerned, and I will be meeting with April next week to review the revenue. I know that there are some revenues that are not posted yet in April, the month, and that we will get that. We will get that done as soon as possible. So we go on to page 2, and this shows, again, that we're just right there in terms of our revenues and our expenses, $326,000 in revenues, $325,000 expended. I spoke with Scott Moreau today and reviewed these accounts, and he also mentioned to me, and I checked with our accountant, we have about $35,000 that just came in through credit, so those will be put in here as revenues for the month of April. On page 6, we have adult education, and I just wanted to bring your attention to the revenues and the expenses. So, and the line right above the revenues is the balance between those two, as you know. So we have a $20,000 balance in adult education at this point. And on page 10 is the school choice amount. I'd like to take a minute to review the school choice amount with you. Our total expenses, again, going back to town meeting, is $573,000. We spent that money because that was the carryover money. That was the amount that we agreed that we would spend. So far this year, we've collected $197,000 to the end of March. I know that we have $72,000 that we need to post in this account, so you'll see that in April. And the projection for revenues at this point is $340,000, approximately $340,000 for the year. And on page 11, we have civic activities, and the civic activities is the amount of money that we receive through the rental of the facilities. So this money is used to make some improvements throughout the schools where there are activities, as well as to pay for custodial expenses, if there are additional custodial expenses due to the nature of event that you have going on in the schools. On page 12, we have the transportation revolving account. I wanted to bring to your attention that we have collected so far $396,000. Probably $10,000 or so of that is from next year. People are already starting to give money for next year because they get a little bit of a discount. So we have that collected, and we've expended $274,000, but we also have 2 more payments left for transportation for approximately $101,000. My point in bringing all that out to you is that in the expense column is approximately $374,000. For next year, we budgeted $400,000 in revenues for this account, as well as $400,000 in expenses. Our student activity accounts, which is the very next page on page 13, this goes back to your question, Barbara, about what happens with those monies that are collected. They're collected at the high school as well as the 2 intermediate schools. It's approximately $34,000 at the high school and $30,000 apiece for the 2 intermediate schools. So far, we have not spent that money, but it will be spent in April on the stipends for the class advisors. So that, in a nutshell, is a summary of the revolving accounts. Our next report is a summary of our general fund expenses. You're welcome. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got your back on this one,
You
Frank.
got me? Okay, thank you. Well, I'll give you 2 reports here. Why not give them both out at the same time? They both say the same thing. You've seen these reports before. They are what we say are summary reports. One is by location, and the other is by the DESE function codes. And this school district, as you know, and I'm saying this so that Michelle will know this, but it is going to change real soon. There's a general fund and there is a special education fund. When we consolidate all of our accounts with the town, there will just be a general fund. The special ed expenses will all go into the general fund. The important thing on both of these reports to look at is on page 3 for the report that says by DESE, Department of Education, Secondary Elementary Function Codes. And the last line, we started with a $50 million budget. We went to town meeting. They gave us 800 and some odd $1,000. In addition, we carried over $108,000. So we had a revised budget of $50.9 million. You see how much we've expended there, $32.6 million. Our encumbrances are $16.1. So right now, we've either expended or encumbered approximately 96% of the budget. The reason why we have such a high number, I think, available under the available budget is because there are some salaries that are not encumbered. and that would include your secretarial salaries as well as your aide salaries. So we're not encumbering those salaries, so that's why you see a high number right there for the available budget. So you really are committed, obviously, to spend all of that money. And I want to pass out to you the very large
My favorite.
report that you've all been waiting for. I don't know what you do with it when you get it home, but I'm sure review, right?
Recycling monster.
So this here is, of course, the report that the auditors recommended from Melanson and Heath. And we have been doing this every month and giving you a comparison of the previous month and the actual month, which in this case is March 31. So when we look at the columns, we see column AP is our revised budget, AQ our actual, AR our encumbrance, then our balance, and then this column AT is the column that the auditors recommended, and they said you ought to put a column in there that shows what you think you're going to expend beyond what you have already expended and what you've already encumbered. So we're saying, in addition to that, we think we're going to spend what's under the required column. So I'd like to draw your attention to the last page, if I may, to tell you that you should always check this report and compare it to the other reports that came directly from Munis. Because this is an Excel spreadsheet, and sometimes you can have a difference in the formula. What you're most interested in is looking at line 813 on page 14 and comparing that to your revised budget, your expenditures, your encumbrances, and what your balance is. They should be the same. In this case, it shows on column AU that if you take into consideration the expenses, if you take into consideration our encumbrances, and if you take into consideration what we think will be required expenses for the rest of the year, then there will be a negative balance of $382,000. When we met with town meeting officials and the tri-board, we said that we were probably going to need some additional funds. And so they said to us, leave $500,000 in your circuit breaker, and you can leave the $200,000, which was the estimate for the school choice for this year. And those two amounts together should carry you with any negative balance. So we started out back in December, and we projected after meeting as an administrative team and looking at all of our expenses, a negative balance of $736,000. Then, in January, we reduced that a little bit more. We're getting a little bit tighter control on it. It went down to $660,000. In February, it was $577,000. Now, you see it at $382,000. And the reasons why it's gone from $577,000 to the $382,000 are because we've reduced some expenses in this previous month. So, for example, if you looked at the first page and you saw legal costs in here, for the previous month under February, we had estimated that we were going to carry an additional $20,000. That's on line 48. If you went straight across on line 48 under your required column, you'd see that we had $20,000 there. But as the year progresses and we're more sure about our numbers, we've said we don't think we're going to overexpend that. So we're going to take that out of the required column. Similarly, with special education contract services, tuitions, home and hospital, and transportation, we've reduced all of those accounts by approximately $141,000. And finally, we have reduced our Comcast account by $30,000 because we've taken that and we've started to charge our E-rate expenses, as you saw in the previous report. So all in all, we have a projected balance at this time of $382,000. We have met as an administrative team. All that's necessary to finalize our numbers for the month of April is to review the utility expenses, which we will be doing next week, excuse me. And then we'll be coming before you at the next meeting to review the status of the general fund as it stands right there. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Frank.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Frank. Well done.
The next item of business is field trip application from Mrs. Cochran. Trip to Portugal and Spain to take place February 12th through February 21st, 2016. Entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
How do we get this positive stuff out? How do we let the parents and...
I know.
How do we let them know that? Are we doing, can you fill us in a little bit, Dr. Hirsch and Dr. Tiano, about a wonderful trip like that? How do other parents know that that's taking place, sir?
We provide a variety of ways that we reach out to parents. Again, we have a website that gets 1 million hits a month. We have a variety of Facebook, Twitter, through Chelmsford Telemedia, a robust programming. We have an entire channel in which we put out to the folks of Chelmsford exactly where the dollars go in terms of showcasing our students and showcasing our staff.
I agree with everything you just said, because if I was a parent, that's where I'd be looking at some of those portals that you've created. Is there any outside the box thinking that we could do for the other people that might not have children that want to hear the good things that are going on in the system?
We take all of our PR flows through our technology office, and simultaneously anything that happens, for example, at the pick a school, Harrington School, that'll go up through to Anne Marie. It goes on our webpage first, and then simultaneously goes out to the Patch, the Sun, and the Independent. So a lot of those articles that you see there, it's a very focused stream.
Do they
that we
pick it
have.
up, sir? Do they
She has a
pick it up?
byline on all the papers.
Yeah.
100% of the time, she'll pick it up and
She
she'll...
writes it and sends it, they print it.
Great, great, thank you.
We work hard at that.
Just might note that the tradition of travel for the students goes way back. You know, we used to have full exchanges, but because of the requirements of testing and so forth, we've had to change from true exchanges, although in some of these programs, they spend, some time in parent homes and so forth, but not necessarily all of them. And Mrs. Corcoran and people from the art department and people from the foreign language department and sometimes from social studies, more so at the lower levels. But these are tremendous opportunities for people. And it's a big responsibility. I just point this out for the people. They sacrifice, people think, well, it's great, they get a free trip. Yeah, with 50 kids. And
a lot of heavy
tremendous, a lot of responsibility. But they are, we're lucky to have faculty members who are willing to take that on and to take these opportunities for the kids. I can tell you from personal experience, because my daughter traveled to Germany, and my son-in-law traveled to Italy. And the connections, this is quite a long time ago, the connections are still there. Which is, in fact, when my son-in-law and daughter went on their honeymoon, they visited in Italy with people that he had stayed with. So that, in many cases, they're among the, most valuable experiences that kids have. So I think just take a moment to note that.
I'm assuming there's a certain amount of filtering that goes, you have to qualify behaviorally in order to go on these trips, I would assume.
Yeah. Yes. And one of the advantages of traveling with the groups that they use, they've been using these groups for a while, and even when you travel independently, knowing that if there's a medical emergency or whatever, that it's going to be handled by the group and not just yourself, that in and of itself is huge, and it happens. I mean, when you travel all these years with these numbers of young people, it happens. It's just great insurance, if you want to think of it that way, to be working with a group that you can rely on when those situations occur. Okay, that takes us, I'm sorry.
We didn't actually vote.
Oh, no, we didn't. Thank you very much.
Moved and seconded.
Yes.
Oh.
We got the motions, didn't we? Yeah,
Yes.
we
Yeah,
got that
you have
far.
motions.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, aye.
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 Nays, abstentions, unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Policy.
Finally.
At least it's short. We're
One of them's short.
Well, the other one is little discussion. At 2303, we've just titled it just subcommittees, taken out negotiation grievance subcommittees. Mike had given us some suggestion on wording, but it didn't fit in with the title, the original title of the policy, so we changed it. And you will see in red what was originally there that we've decided it will be deleted, and what is not crossed out is new. Black is what is original. And then you notice at the bottom that we've added reviewed and revised because it hadn't been revised before May 5th. That would be tonight if we approve this. So under subcommittees, the content basically in summary is that we have, it's some of the things we discussed this evening. We have separate subcommittees that's assigned for each of the collective bargaining units, and then additional subcommittees will include but not be limited to, and we put a few in there. If you want to add anything or change any of the names of anything, that's fine. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to add or change, or any questions? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve policy 2303 under school committee organization titled subcommittees.
Second.
Any further discussion, any further questions? Okay. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions, unanimous.
Policy 5103.07 is a more elaborate criminal offender record information and fingerprinting. This came from legal. We didn't write it. The policy subcommittee did not write it. What the policy subcommittee did, because it would not be this long if we had
There would
written
have
it.
been more subordinate clauses.
We may in the future choose to subdivide it into two. One would be the fingerprinting and the other one would be Corey, just for the simplicity of accessing it. However, this came also out of the HR department. I think that Dr. Tiano had also gone through legal. This is not the first time we've seen this. We wanted to make it shorter. But we just figured in order to get it up, we'll just leave it with the way that it has been recommended. What will happen is what is in red there, that will be taken out. And we did just add known here as CHRI because everything, there's an acronym is in there, but it doesn't make the referral to it there. That's a minor change. And each of the pages I will have to put in the appropriate format that we have the other pages, as you see on the front cover, and then the bottom will be reflected on the page number as it's online, and if we ever get around to getting a CD. We added the references at the end. They don't appear in red necessarily, of the original document. That doesn't change the content or the intent. And then that is where it says replaces policy 5103.07, because that's the format we've been using, plus the other format of when it was adopted and the other information in order to keep it consistent with all the rest of the policies in the manual.
I'll make the motion if you promise not to change one word.
I'm not changing
Can I,
anything.
can I just, yeah, do you want to go?
Is this a stronger policy, this document, than the previous one?
Well, we didn't have one for fingerprinting, so it's brand new. And then the wording on Corey is coming from legal, so it's different than what we had prior.
So prior to this, we did not have fingerprinting.
That's
Now
correct.
we do.
Yes,
So this would be stronger than the previous one?
yes.
This is a new law that's gone into place that requires even school committee members, teachers, school committee members to have fingerprints on file.
So we can tell our parents, our taxpayers, that we're improving. The new policy that we have in place is stronger than the previous one because of the addition of fingerprinting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Implementation of
security.
a law. The legislature
That's
passed the
okay.
law.
Yeah. And it also increases the security that we have of people going into buildings.
Right, but it doesn't require fingerprinting of school committee members.
Oh, I thought it did. Are you certain? We
Didn't say
discussed
anything
this
in there.
because it's a 3-year.
The
window?
query is, we had to do a query, because we're always in the
I thought the
building.
fingerprinting applied to the school committee members.
The other thing is that we
Why
do not
wouldn't it
pick up
apply?
the,
I apologize. Why wouldn't it apply to us? It
don't
applies to
know.
everyone else?
No, it doesn't.
Are you sure?
There was a lot of discussion about this, 9 months ago or whatever,
Yes.
when they were rolling out the law, about whether or not, my recollection of it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my recollection of it is that this law allows the school committee to set a policy which would require fingerprinting of all volunteers, including like PTO members and people working at the Pumpkin Fest and things like that. It does not require us to do so. It does require all teachers and staff to undergo this fingerprint check. And I don't believe it,
Well, here's
because
an
if you
example.
look at the second paragraph, it says CHRI checks shall be completed, blah, 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 the suitability of full or part-time current and prospective school employees who may have direct and unmonitored contact with children. The Corey
it's different.
is slightly different.
The query can be required, but the fingerprinting is not?
Well, it states.
I think the Corey is required.
Yeah, it is required.
Right.
By the state. We could write a policy that would be strong, I think that would be stronger than the state law, but I don't believe that's a proposal on the table right now.
No, it's just to do this in order to be able to have the policy, because we don't have this
What was
policy.
the fee for the
online.
fingerprint, 55?
I thought it was
55,
it was
yeah.
55 or 30 for part-time employees.
35 if you do not hold a DESE license.
Okay.
55 if you do hold the license.
And we do not fund that.
We do
The
not.
problem is it costs $55.
The
So we don't wanna do that.
employees have
They
to pay for it. And that was part of what took such a long time to get it figured out, because it was not, when the legislature in its wisdom passed the law, they didn't assign responsibility for payment to any particular group, and so that had to be kind of thrashed out. And I think at the end of the day, the argument that won was that it's, you can think of it as analogous to licensure. You have to pay to have your license. You're going to have to pay to have your fingerprints checked as well.
If there are other changes in the law, that's when the policy would come back to us in order to have amendments or changes made. And then would make whatever the necessary
Right.
notation of references, if there are any changes in the dates.
If the board felt down the road that they were passionate about some other addition to this policy, could they incorporate it at that point?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can change the policies whenever we want to change the policies, if we want to make them stronger, or we want to delete something, or we want to change something.
The police, for example, if the police chief came to us and said, you know what, I think that this should be a policy, and made a recommendation, and we felt comfortable with it, we could incorporate that.
Yes.
Okay.
But if someone disagreed, they could take us to court.
Sure.
Could what?
Take us to court.
About?
If we decided to institute a policy that all volunteers must have their fingerprints taken.
Well, it wasn't just.
It was, I think you're talking generally?
I'm talking generally.
Yes.
I mean, people can contest whenever a policy differs from the law.
I
It's a basis for,
Yeah, I mean, I guess they could take us to court, but
Yeah.
I think.
Anybody can take it.
Yeah, so if you look at
So anyway.
if you look at the second paragraph under Corey policy and compare it to the second paragraph on the first page, that's on the third page,
Thank you, Mr. Chief.
right? That highlights or delineates the differences between when the fingerprint checks are required and when the Corey checks are required. Right, so taxi cab company employees and volunteers who may have direct and unmonitored contact with children are covered by the Corey policy, but not the CHRI, the fingerprint policy.
okay.
Yeah, it does state who is subject to which.
Right.
Any further discussion or questions?
Can I just ask, why does it say replaces policy 5103.07?
Because 5103.07 originally was the Corey policy, and what I will do is I will add in here, replaces policy 5103.0, originally the Corey policy. And I'll title it for you.
I think you just lost Barbara's vote.
What's that?
She's changing words.
I know, I told
All
her
right.
not to.
Well, no,
I
I'm
have- I
changing the
have no other
reference.
questions, Mr.
I'm just
Chairman.
changing the reference to add it, just, what you do is it says replaces policy 5103.07, and I'm going to put the
Trust is
title of
lost,
the
Evelyn.
the old policy.
Was the motion made?
The motion has been made and seconded, I
Okay.
believe, right?
Yes, I
Ready to
seconded
vote?
it, she made it. Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Nays, abstentions. I know what I was getting at.
So what I will do with these is make sure that they're all in the right format, and then I will get them to Debbie to put in for the paper copy in the office, and Anne Marie so that she can put them online, to update them.
Okay.
That would be the next thing to do. Okay.
Actions to be completed. Quickly went through back, from the back minutes, and two that I saw were dealing with a letter with a selectman, which I just soon let rest for a while. And work with the Board of Selectmen to explore joint subcommittees. I don't, I didn't remember that, but it was there.
Joint subcommittees?
Yeah. Anybody?
I think it came as part of the consolidation. It was just a suggestion that perhaps to further explore that topic.
Oh,
that
so they're
we-
related.
Yeah, somewhat.
Well, so actually, there was a meeting on that level with myself, Pat Wojcik, Tom Gilroy, the town manager, and the town treasurer and accountant were also present for at least part of it. We did, so this is what I'm thinking of, we had talked here about other opportunities for consolidation. And the town accountant and the town treasurer gave fairly impassioned statements about why they thought consolidation of payroll was a bad idea. It amounts to the fact that it's really a full-time job, and what we'd be essentially asking is for one person to do two full-time jobs.
And school payroll is completely different from any other
Right,
kind
one
of
of
payroll.
that was one of the points I made, that you have some, unusual characteristics of the school payroll that don't necessarily show up in the town payroll. So not only would it be double the work, you'd have a whole other suite of competencies that you'd need to build. There isn't necessarily somebody sitting around with a lot of time on their hands who's already ready to do this. The other point they made was that in both cases, these are bi-weekly exercises, and they thought it was important to have that week off to do the checking and preparation. That if you're constantly on the go, you're more likely to have mistakes that occur and require some kind of solution down the line. So their strong recommendation was that we not look any further into consolidating the payroll operations between the school and the town side. That argument then extended to most of the other suggestions about consolidation. The people are working hard. The other point that was made was that you can imagine scenarios where chain of command becomes important, and that it would not necessarily be helpful to have somebody working in the town treasurer's office who has reporting responsibilities to the superintendent, or vice versa. That it just leads to unclear lines of communication, and again, kind of as a best practice, you'd want to reduce or remove those. So for almost any sort of consolidation you could imagine, with a person spending half the week here and half the week at the town offices, it doesn't look like there's much that can be done. The one thing that did come out of it, and I think I sent you an email and I copied Tom Gilroy on it, because he's the only surviving member, the only surviving elected member of that meeting. There's going to be a follow-up discussion looking at whether or not there were possibilities of combining the maintenance and the custodial departments. That was something we didn't get into in much detail. It was easy to throw up questions that nobody could answer, but it looks like something that maybe could be pursued. Obviously, that's going to have buy-in from both sides. We'll see where it goes. The other thing that came out of the meeting was that I believe the town manager is going to look into having another benchmark analysis done. If you recall, probably 10 or 12 years ago, we had an outside firm come in and do what was called the benchmark analysis, I believe. They looked at, what's our staffing level of police officers versus comparable towns, what's the average salary of a teacher versus comparable towns, and just trying to look at a whole bunch of different metrics to see if there's a place that there might be, that kind of a global view or a top-down analysis would suggest that there are possibilities for improvements or further efficiencies. I don't know where that stands.
How often are those done, do you know?
Only when we go out and do it. I mean, I think it cost $15,000 or $20,000 last time. I believe the town manager was going to look into whether or not we could work with UMass Lowell. They have a very good public policy school there, actually. And if we could interest somebody to do that as a like a master's dissertation or something, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
That's what I know about that. So I'd say that's kind of hanging fire. I would reach out to, I think, Tom, to see if there was a date set up for a second meeting.
Okay. But I think that was a very good summary. I'm impressed that you remember all of
Long-winded.
that. No,
It's
but,
been burned in.
The big thing, two things that in many cases, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And the two possibilities that was still sort of hanging were maintenance and custodians.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those were the points that, when we talked about it and revised that letter, that we felt, let's talk about where the circumstances exist where consolidation makes sense, rather than just jumping in. And as it turns out, it doesn't really make sense in most areas in our system. If there's an efficiency to be had, we're for it. But it would create inefficiencies.
When can we talk about the maintenance and the janitors? Because I'd like to understand that a little bit more to see if we can consolidate some things there.
I think that's in the hands of the three chairs at this point, to look at some kind of path forward. It's not a well-defined path forward at this point, I would say.
It's very, Dr. Tiano, could you explain who has the responsibility? Is it true we own 6 feet from the building or some kind of a number, sir?
Those lines are clearly defined. We worked over the last couple of years with Kathleen Canavan and Bruce Griswold prior to Jeff Demers. In terms of, we have some very clear maps in terms of snow removal, lawn cutting, and so forth. So that's been ironed out, where that had been a gray area for a long
Forever.
time.
Do we have a new Aramac leader for that?
Not as of yet.
Okay.
But the two folks who are in place, Sherry and Dave, have been doing an outstanding job.
Did you?
Yeah, I just think, I think that's interesting, and I've thought about that, how can we create some efficiencies with the janitors and the maintenance department around our school grounds, because maybe I'm not responsible for that, therefore I don't have to touch it, whereas if we empower one group of people, and let's just say it's the maintenance department, just for a second, well then, then we can go to one source to say, how come this isn't done? But could we talk about that, or how do we get into that a little bit more and learn about that?
I think that part of the discussion was based upon, what you're saying, in that we've already given maintenance to the town, and that there has been a lot of give and take as to who's responsible for how many feet or what they do and all of the other pieces. And to have them have the custodians, then they could work together and cover all of the facilities in upkeep of some sort, whether it's just cleaning or if it's building or painting or whatever it is that they do. And then they can coordinate all of that rather than having one entity over here and another entity over here. And we get complaints about things that maybe the town needs to have.
Have we had a discussion with Paul on this?
I had a discussion with Paul to ask him if something was feasible, and he said, yeah, it could be feasible, but we need to go further and have, the committee sit down and talk about it, and also to see whether or not DPW, how they feel about it, and then the cost of it, because we also have the contract with Aramark. The last time when we gave maintenance to the town, we gave the people and the money that we had in our budget went to the town side, the municipal side of the budget. So it isn't as if the school saved anything. It's that we moved it over.
But this is the last time, what Judge is saying, the last time
Well,
that
we
you
were-
had this discussion.
That was
Oh, you
before the
implemented
election.
Yeah.
It was probably in March. I asked him, since there's so much conflict that's there, how do you feel about that? And he says, well, it's worth a discussion.
This
to
was
see.
in conjunction with the talk of consolidation.
Can I make a recommendation, or can I make a motion, and teach me if I'm saying it the right way? But I'd love to sit down or understand more about this consolidation of the maintenance and the janitors, at least the dialogue.
I don't know my own interpretation, I don't think we need a motion, in my opinion. I
No.
think we just
I think
seek out.
that's it's going that way.
Yeah.
I mean, the next step would be for the three chairs to sit down with Paul and
It's
Mr.
above the
Pusicchetti.
maintenance subcommittee. The maintenance subcommittee is concerned with rooms being too hot and something's not being clean, more day-to-day things. This is at the administrative level if it's going to take place. So it's finance and Paul and Gary Pusicchetti and all of those people need to have kind of a summit, I think.
Yeah.
And are you part of that summit, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll put that as, I don't know if it's new or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's kind of continuing. Yeah,
Al, if I could make
Yeah.
a suggestion?
Sure.
I strongly suggest
That'd be
you
great.
have a member from the school administration be part of that.
Yeah.
Or you have the town administration, finance department, and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for people who actually work in the schools and work with these folks, could really provide you with some insight.
yeah. Okay, school and town. Does anyone recall anything else that we have hanging out there in terms of open items? We probably do, but I didn't see a
I'll
lot.
go through and check, but most of the open items were related to the budget.
You can
That's
look,
been the focus of the last month or so.
Okay.
you can look at the end of the minutes.
We're almost
I
ready.
did
But I
that
didn't.
quickly.
Yeah.
Some of the things we've
Stay the course.
just been taken care of along
Yeah.
the way.
Pretty much
Well,
follows.
while you're doing that, new items, I'm better at doing this after the fact. I don't have my computer, I don't have a computer.
Right.
You were really good at that. I write and I can't keep up, but do you remember anything? Otherwise, I can get it off the.
I've got a request that we get RFPs
Oh, yes.
just communicated to us when they go out. I don't think it needs to be an agenda item, but if they're just copied to us or if there's a place on the website where they go up.
That's a good idea.
I talked with Michael earlier today, and one of the suggestions that he had at the time, which I thought was good, is to maybe take a look at dealing with policies with regard to religion and holidays, because we dealt with, more or less a specific situation, which I think was satisfactorily resolved. But I wouldn't be surprised if it came up again.
Well, yeah, actually, there were complaints about homework assigned over the Easter weekend.
Oh,
I mean, this is, it's very difficult. And this is where we're going to have a serious discussion about how many days can we take out of homework, But if you think about it, Friday, Saturday, Sunday are all holy days.
Take out,
That
we're
weekend.
looking to add.
No. Well, I think that's what we're hearing. That's what we're hearing from the CFT. It's one thing if you've only got 1 or 2 days that are no holiday or no homework holidays. And probably it's better to have no homework than to not have school at all. But if we're going to be consistent, if we're going to apply the same policy across the board, I think we do have to look at how we do that.
You know, we talked about this when we had the petition for the Diwali, and I think we're going to get to a point where it's going to be, if you are participating or celebrating or recognizing a religious holiday that interferes with your ability to do homework, notify your teacher so that you can make the homework up. That's it. Blanket policy. Teacher allows you to make it up, no questions asked. And I think that's what's going to happen across the state. I think that we are getting to a point that we are so culturally diverse that in order to respect and recognize that, we're going to get there.
You know, from a teacher's viewpoint, because I can identify with that, you know, you're trying to get to marking periods, get stuff coming in over, you know, a series of days, so you know, looking at the success of the exam or whatever, you don't have that information, you know, at one time. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's easier to set it up than it is to do it. You know, I know that much from my own experience.
I agree.
So, I mentioned that, Michael, maybe what some of us could do on our own, it would be to look at some urban districts where there is much more of a diverse population than we even have, and just, you know, maybe we can get some ideas from that. I don't know that we need to, you know, this is an emergency thing, but it's not going away either, as Mr. Rigney has already noted. So I'll just put that down. And another thing that I don't know that we need to, actually we can do with it, you know, between the two of us another time. Sure. But one of the things that has been an issue, I guess, from some of the town sports organizations or whatever, is access to facilities, because there are 3 or more people booking facilities, in a sense. I mean, you can correct me, but the athletic office, community ed, and Jane?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess there's been a problem that some of the athletic teams have shown up for practice or whatever, and because, you know, so maybe it's something we can take a look at. I don't know. Maybe you don't think there's a need for it. I don't know.
It's the first I'm hearing of it.
Yeah. Well, this first I heard of it in terms of, I guess it was basketball.
But,
People showed up, you
you
know.
know, I think the
Yeah.
first thing we have to do is identify, did it happen once, did it happen twice?
Yeah,
You know?
that's fine. I
So
just,
I'd be happy to investigate that with you.
you know, if you hear anything
Sure.
that came up.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that people have? You know, I can go back through the minutes and see, because we did a fair amount of things tonight, to see if we have other things on the table. Did you want to talk about the sign while we have a minute?
Would you like me to, sir?
Yeah, I'd like to.
So, under the direction of the chairman, he asked me to reach out to NRT. We had a conversation with them. I took the liberty of reaching out to a sign company. We spoke to them. They gave us exactly what the sign would look like, the wording, the colors. They've approved it. It's a metal sign that they would like over the top of the scoreboard. As you know, they've already given us $25,000. They gave us a 3-year contract, if I'm correct, and I am correct. So the sign costs less than $1,500, about $1,450. They're very happy with it. I have their signature. It's a metal sign. It's not illuminated. It's an easy lift, and it makes them happy. And to be honest, were you going to say something, sir?
Did you check with the board of, the zoning board as well?
I talked to
Okay.
Paul Cohen, and because it's inside of the facility, you know, because when we were originally talking, we were talking on the corner,
Right.
which is outside, and I think would have been more directly,
Yeah.
so
I
the
apologize
opinion.
for interrupting.
No, it's fine. The opinion we got is because it's within the facility, that it's not subject to the sign committee, whatever it is.
Great.
They were just very, very, very concerned about them putting up their money right now. Where's their sign? After a couple of conversations, they're very happy with what they have. It's not an ostentatious sign. I have copies. I can send it around to everybody here. They're happy with the way it reads. Showed it to the
Just the
chairman.
way that it came up, we was probably standing at a lacrosse game or whatever, and it's a general conversation. Well, do we ever do anything with the sign? Kind of thing. And so I think it's good that we're honoring that obligation, and it's within the reasonable financial situation. So it's one thing off the list.
So with the contract, since the sign hasn't gone up yet, does the date of which it should start is when that sign goes up?
No, they're happy with it. They're all set. They're not looking for anything extended. They'll,
Because I think that would be, since it's been so long.
there's no problems. They're happy with everything. They're happy with the sign, they understand. And it's non-illuminated, it's 18 by 2 feet. It fits right on the top. It's exactly what they want. Abby, I sent one around, I didn't know if you'd like to take a look at it. I should actually have one for our business manager.
Yeah.
Actually, I have another
Thanks.
copy.
Thanks.
Here you go, Michelle.
Okay.
Alana, would you like one?
Is there anything else that we need to?
Did we want to discuss the opportunity that we have with the Lieutenant Governor coming and listening to not only just the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, FinCom, other officials in town, but some of our adjacent
Sure.
cities and towns, and look at dates?
Yeah.
It was something
Just-
that Sal had brought up
Just for those that
earlier.
don't know, when we went into Boston, and we, among other people, we met the Lieutenant Governor, and she was very anxious to come out here and see the wonderful town of Chelmsford. So I know that there's been some discussion away from the table about possible dates. Was anything suggested?
Yeah, earlier, Sal and I had talked about the possibility of he suggested several dates to give to her to see what is convenient for her schedule. And one of those dates is May 28th. And then, because of Senior Week and stuff, would jump to June 11th if we do it on a Thursday evening. And you suggested 5:30. You've been to some of her other events.
Yeah, just to maybe recap, Mr. Superintendent, Dr. Tiano, Dr. Hirsch, we bumped into the Lieutenant Governor. We're always on the stump looking for opportunities for our system. We explained the situation of some of the challenges we have. She volunteered to come up to your school system and hold a meeting, and she asked if we could invite some other local school systems to answer any local questions. This is just a part of her becoming a little bit more local, but it's certainly an opportunity for us to explain some of the challenges we have. I think it's a good opportunity. She asked if we could get back to her and give her some dates. This is very recent. This just happened over the past less than a week ago, and this is the first time we've actually discussed it. So with that, it's an opportunity for us always to get FaceTime with some of the more powerful people in the state.
Okay, so we'll see how that works out. It was a very good day. One of the more exciting things was when we met with Representative Golden. We're just having conversation. We were talking about the challenge of getting full-day kindergarten, and he was really animated. He said, I don't remember the man's name, but he said, I think so-and-so can help us.
Tom Moreau.
Okay? And,
Never forget.
it wasn't, you can tell if somebody's just politically saying, I think we can do
Well, I
something.
just
But he was
caution.
No, but
which-
Politician.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
not that
But
there's an answer, but it's nice to know that, somebody's going to check on some
Yeah.
things for us.
Representative Golden is committed to Chelmsford. He said he was committed to Chelmsford. We believe he's committed to Chelmsford, and it's part of the coalition you build, right? Chairman Thomas, you have a representative like Tommy Golden or Jimmy Archero, leading the way, and then you have the Lieutenant Governor in the background, maybe the Chairman of the Ways and Means, and all of a sudden, boom, something maybe happens.
Just one thing, on Friday night, there was a fundraiser at the Elks for Mrs. Fabry, who was a teacher from the system. They're raising money for a scholarship, and Representative Golden came and was auctioneer. He's good. If you He's very good at that. I didn't know it was one among his talents, but it was my understanding. I don't have any figures, but just from the auctions
Yeah,
and
they did very well at the
They
auction.
did well, right?
They
Yeah.
were able to, I think, meet their goal
Yeah.
and pay out their fees.
so it was a good night, and it was for a nice lady. So
Can I just make one,
Yeah.
when you're looking at these dates, I mean, there's not gonna be one night that you're not gonna hit something that's happening within the district. You said the 28th Center has their PTO meeting, however, on June 11th is a concert over at the McCarthy Middle School. Much more difficult, they're not gonna change a concert for you, but PTO, I think, could be a little bit more flexible.
Right. How long do you anticipate this lasting?
She's volunteered for a couple of hours, so maybe a
The
5:30 to
concert, yeah.
7,
I mean, students
7:30.
have
Yeah,
to be there.
PTO could maybe move their meeting to another night and then,
Well, she said town officials,
okay.
so, we can extend it to whoever would like to come.
Yeah, there's 75 seats at the police station, so.
well, if they could come for the first hour
Yeah.
and address their concerns or whatever, and still make
Yeah.
meetings, so everybody should have a chance at least to meet.
So I just have a question.
Yeah.
We have a couple of dates, because then Sal can get back to her on those dates to see about if that's feasible.
Yeah.
And then once we know that this is going to actually happen, we should make sure that the police station is available. And do you want me to work with Sal, or how would you like this to work to invite some of the other communities? And do we want to brainstorm as to which ones we want to invite?
What were the dates? Because I thought Dr. Hirsch just said that maybe the 11th wasn't such a good idea.
The 28th was one of the dates you suggested, and then you skipped it over because we have graduation and senior palooza. Sorry, I'm graduating from high school again this year. So the 11th was a concert at the McCarthy Middle School. Starts at 7 p.m.
I honestly think the lieutenant governor's schedule is going to be even more chock full than ours is. If
We can just see.
I think
We just wanna give her a
let's see
couple of
what-
dates.
Let's see when she's available. I'm okay with the 28th or the 11th. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that the 11th is also Edward's birthday. So,
School committees
but
don't mind.
that's okay. I mean, the meeting starts at 5:30.
Now, his dad's on the school committee. He could pull a string or two.
Yeah, he'd like to think so. I think we just have to put some dates out there and see what she has to say. There, like you said, there's always going to be some kind of conflict.
yeah.
If are two enough, do we need to give her
You
a
want to go to
third?
the 18th?
Well, let's, maybe
Is
the
there an
question
open
Something
to
going on?
Dr.
Is there an
Hirsch,
open Tuesday in
what-
that span?
Any dates out there that doesn't seem as
What's
busy?
going on
Would know.
senior week that Thursday?
I forget.
Something.
Something. It's something every single night.
Every night, okay, I didn't know if it
So
was a
maybe I can
morning.
get
know
back
they
to
have
you,
the
we can talk
breakfast.
about
Yeah,
it.
the 18th looks, I mean, for the district looks clear, but,
You want to add that then?
Yeah, add the 18th, because that may be a better, and it's further out, she may not have as much stuff.
That's 3. That should be good.
Yeah. And then we should decide what other districts, because she did ask for some other towns. And then the question, we write a letter, I mean, I'm secretary, so write a letter, or do you want me to call them, or how would you like that invitation to go? You want to work?
You just do it away from the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think just communicate informally. She wanted to get this area, so, just if you go,
Right.
the community's right around Chelmsford, that's,
Okay.
I wouldn't make it too
But not
big,
long.
though, right?
No, well, I just want to check. Before I do anything, I will check.
Yeah. Well,
We're good?
yeah. Anything else?
None.
One other thing that I want to bring up, I'm going to send out an email, but I would like you all to develop questions for interviewing interim candidates. It was mentioned in early discussion of this that, we should have some standardization so that all candidates have equal opportunity, and, there may be something that's different, but, so if I've started working on this, I think I can compile a reasonable list from the suggestions, because I have a feeling there'll be a lot of overlap. If I have concerns, I'll come back to the committee, but, so if you have thoughts on that, again, if there are people that are not obvious candidates that you want to have interviewed, I need to know that, and I need to know suggestions for questions so that we can start to move forward on that, because we're running out of. Any other business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. Press questions. Thank you. I saw as soon as I looked up.
Now, Al, regarding that NASBO interview summary that you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, was that literally just like notes from their visit here, or is that like a preliminary report?
Just, go ahead.
Those are just
You
the
can-
minutes that we had of the three of us that, when you sat in on that meeting, it's
Okay.
exactly the same thing.
Just that?
That's
Okay.
all.
Alrighty.
We haven't had any
No,
reports
we
back.
haven't got anything back.
Okay. Now, as far as in terms of the special education out-of-district transportation, which vendor is the district currently using, and what's the cost? Just to compare to,
Merrimack Education Center.
okay, and what's the cost and how many years was that contract?
The cost is approximately $900,000, $950,000, approximately.
Over a year, or the cost of
Yes, over the year. Mhm.
I thought it was.
And we had a 3-year contract?
I apologize. You're right.
over 1 year, and it was how many years in the contract?
This is a 3-year contract that was bid.
Okay, and that's, no, I mean the one that's just ending, that was a 3-year
I
contract?
believe that was 3 as well.
Okay, just wanted to be able to compare
Sure.
versus what you're going to have now. And in terms of the Director of Business and Finance position, how many candidates were interviewed for the first and second rounds?
For the first round, we had 12 candidates, and we interviewed 3 or
Yeah.
4. And for the second round, we interviewed 3, I believe, out of 10.
10 total applicants, or 10 viable applicants?
No, 10 total.
Okay. And when will Ms. Cresta officially be starting here in the district?
July 1.
July 1st? Okay, so there won't really be any overlap for the two of you to work together?
We'll work
I'm
on
sharing information already. There's
Okay.
Work on a transition.
And what will the salary be for Ms. Cresta?
That has to be negotiated.
Still has to be negotiated. Okay, so when will a copy of that contract be available?
When it's signed and completed.
Do you have a timeline for
Probably this
completion?
week.
This week?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
You're done.
We're going to see you tomorrow, Al?
Yeah, 7:30.